Hello, hello. I would like to go through the first four elements of what is a proposed periodic table of currents. So, the principle, the concept is simple. Starting with a current through a single channel in a polygon. Current, polygon with a channel, polygon, channel. Maybe I should have done that a little more color based. Neutron, proton, also maybe like a plus, like a actual collision of current location. I'm not sure yet if that is a thing. That might actually not occur until iron, maybe. Like maybe iron like necessitates the currents to collide for some reason, because it's like the position where a supernova begins. Okay, so with that in mind, this concept, and maybe also in mind that this is a rough draft that really probably could use a team effort if people believe that it makes sense. Okay, simple concept, just a current entering into a channel inside of a container, basically, where the current, when there's only one channel, it exits through the same channel. So it basically has an inlet plus outlet, single channel, which only really occurs in hydrogen, I believe. So far, it appears like there's just once there begin to be more than one channel, which is basically each element as well, then there's immediately like a cross current. It's able to go through rather than back out the same place it came in. So the simplest one, a polygon with a channel with a current coming in, it's going to basically go around the channel and create like a vortex, a point. And then it's going to go out the channel, and so that vortex, that point, behaves as the proton, where the actual mass of the proton is the container itself, where this current flows within here. But this current, so I believe that as we go up through the periodic table, the current coming in increases. So like here, assume it's at a steady state. Like this is the the objective here is to figure out what the system steady states into, and perhaps some steps along the way. So here it steady states into just a simple polygon with a inlet and outlet. So we can look at Google Maps. Islands are really good examples of these kinds of things. This one is hard to say. It looks like it might have an inlet here, and the rest of it, even though it's not like filled, doesn't have like an inlet. Like maybe here kind of a little bit, but really here more substantially. So this may be a one inlet unit. It does appear common for them to have. This one has a crossing inlet, so maybe this would count as two. Although, is that natural? It looks natural. Although that does not. I don't know. But there's islands. That's fine. Here's a single inlet. Kind of over here even. Perhaps was all an inlet in a way. Maybe here like an inlet, here an outlet. Just based on the sand here. Here maybe an outlet. I don't know if there was. if there is an outlet. Like, it doesn't necessarily even need to have an outlet flow. It may just be in an equilibrium like this where there's really not much of an inlet or outlet. It's more so just like a polygon shell, a container that has a little bit of current flowing through to kind of like thread it, kind of just connect it to the other systems that current is also connecting the polygon through. Okay, so the polygon's current inside of it increases. Let's assume that the current increases without like popping the polygon into pieces. So maybe not too much of an increase, just enough to begin to cause masses to accumulate, which I believe would essentially be pushed to some region, maybe not exactly as I drew it, but maybe like a back corner. One of the back corners are exactly opposite here, like here, creating like so I drew it here, kind of a little where the mass is just centered. Like it starts over here. If it creates like a more of a circular, it starts over at the far side, but I think the current keeps going behind it to kind of move it to the center point to make a central nucleus of a neutron at the center of this shell of the polygon. But like the currents create space for the eddies of the proton to form, so the neutron doesn't just like form like that. Maybe it does in the center, maybe it more so forms like this. Like there's not really a free neutron. That would basically just be a neutron. If it just formed a neutron by itself with a current going around it, that would essentially be a neutron. But that would be probably unstable, and so to create stability here, hydrogen 1,2 deuterium, the current just like it also, as this is occurring, it's adding mass to the wall where the wall stays intact. If it stays intact, it can add mass to it and just essentially make it more sturdy of a system. So like as it grows, it can contain what it grows within it still, as long as it's not like too much to burst to cause the polygon to just break into small enough pieces where the things within kind of just flow outward to the point where there just is the components again, rather than like the combined system. So there's this potential where the current comes in and it creates enough of a mass to create a stable system that's considered a neutron according to this current flow path. So that's the idea, is based on currents. Can we actually map the stable isotopes through the periodic table? And the isotopes matter because they matter just like this. Like we can't just go from protium here without the stable masses included to then move to, so once this mass produces a second neutron over here, then what happens is the proton, this rotating system, is essentially forced between them. And so the current coming in is also like expedited in this way by the centering of the proton. Like over here it's off center because the neutron's up here and the proton's down here, so the polygon's probably the flow is probably down the middle of the two. Maybe I didn't draw this right. Like it goes down the middle, goes this way, and goes this way. I don't know. But either way, besides the point really, like we can figure out the details as a group, I think. if this is considered of merit, so like then it if enough current is in this tritium, then essentially it punctures the wall here, and the same here, even without in any of these instances. So in protium, it punctures the wall, but then it's just a channel pretty much, and it just evacuates the channel, but because it doesn't have the the neutron like holding a position and forcing the eddies to a side so that they don't just kind of drain out and create like a tube out of the polygon, and then it just breaks into components, and it's really not a hydrogen atom anymore. So it stably sequences the current in order to get larger, like more complex currents within a polygon. It begins to produce little nodes within it that are like stable masses that then shape the overall current, and stable masses and polygon shape until essentially we move through the periodic table. So these ones, essentially, if with enough current, it's going to puncture across from here, just straight across. And this is important because we got to assume like a sequence. If this is occurring, it would suggest a sequence. And if there is a sequence, then it would perhaps shed light, and we can use this, that there is a sequence, as sort of like a like I didn't just like randomly be like, okay, there's a current coming in. Like I kind of initially I thought a channel would be just like fully a channel without both sides, with both sides open, but then it was just a channel, so I couldn't really envision how that made much sense. But as soon as I realized a single channel would really be more like this into a container, then the options started to like emerge, like, oh, okay, so that would produce an eddy, and that eddy would produce masses around it, and then the currents would interact with the masses in a way which would then puncture here. So let's move past hydrogen to helium. So I started with tritium, which I don't think is necessary. Like it could be more. It could be deuterium, probably not tritium or protium. Tritium, protium. It could be deuterium and not tritium, but it would essentially probably just do the same thing, just without the neutron involved. So it would essentially add another proton system. I'm not exactly sure how these currents would function. And then with to creating, like pushing them over here to push the polygon out, because essentially if these currents just like straighten, they just flow out, and the protons that are keeping this shape flow out, and then the polygon can just kind of retreat. So like it doesn't actually have the potential to grow to a new stable system unless it has a neutron over here like pushing the eddies out of the direct path of the current. So it goes right directly through, pushing the two mounds to the two sides, or one mound to one side and the two protons to the other. And I'm not sure about these protons. Maybe they're more like up down here. I was thinking like right here, like in a square with proton, proton, or proton, proton, neutron, neutron, creating just like a square, whereas this one's more triangular. So essentially, we are now feasibly, I know there's no like math or like proofs or anything, but literally just using currents and this concept, we are now through two elements of the periodic table and their isotopes, and we really show that there is no reason for other isotopes, like maybe a 4-1 could be argued here potentially. But it looks like at this point it's like, well, it's not really like a higher current could produce a mass here, but maybe it just like tends to puncture it because it needs to, and it does like systematically. Once enough current is through, it just does it regardless of which arrangement it's in, this one straight across or this one straight across, which then produces either helium 2-4 or 2-3. And then going from 2-4, because lithium is 3-6. So I went from 2-4. I'm not sure if 2-3 would as easily go to lithium as the 2-4 because of this. Like when it's 2-4, it has two neutrons on each, a neutron on each side, and the current cutting across can go physically down the middle of one. So if we pull up the core of Africa, just like this, where it used to be like a sphere, a circle, and the current cutting across here under South America came out of the tip here and cut through the core, separating it in half. Just physically, the mass is physically separated in half. Physically separated in half. And so if the current keeps flowing, then what likely would occur is the two neutrons or half neutrons would begin as half neutrons, but the currents would move them and shape them into becoming just new, complete neutrons. And so I did kind of base this off of Mo-Aurea, but I do believe this is a legitimate thing because if, like I was saying, like just from a straight up current standpoint, not because of this island, but because of a straight up current standpoint. Pardon my initial ones. Current cutting across here would likely puncture opposite to it. In this way, and then when it does this though, it would essentially just go across and then branch off and cut across again. Something of that nature, maybe down this way. But if we look at, that's why Mo-Aurea is important, is because it suggests that it doesn't actually branch off and just go sideways. It branches off and then goes parallel, which is a common occurrence in a lot of energetic flows on Earth, and perhaps also in atoms. So I'm thinking like the polygon at lithium begins to really take polygonal shapes. Like it's not a circle. Like maybe I was thinking hydrogen is a straight up square. Like a good example is this island in the Pacific over here, though, that I can think of. I think it's up here. Here it is. Like it's got straight-ish sides. Maybe it's not quite a square, but straight-ish sides, but a more rounded interior. Like it tends towards a more roundedness in the interior because a current is flowing, whereas on the outside, it's like shaped by pressures that tend to be more like perhaps. or just malleable to the inner currents, like because it starts out kind of squarish and then pushes across, it begins to elongate the side. Let's see, does that get it? Maybe like there, like coming across, it kind of extends outward. Like maybe it was like this, more like here, but the currents cutting across just kind of shape it. So the currents cutting across just kind of shape it in that way, to a point where we then, when we start to hit lithium, we exit the like initial, like more simple arrangements and immediately are running into like complexities. But that's because the universe is complex, but at the same time, this current path is arriving at those complexities. So so back to the concept that it cuts across. It cuts across. So like this channel that it opened in the helium is there in lithium. Like there's the initial channel, and then the channel that it opened for helium, and then the channel that it opened when it became lithium. Because it cuts across for the second channel. So this is the first channel, second channel, third channel. So like there is a sequence also. And when it does this, it can become lithium 3,6 with only 3 neutrons, but it's more stable with 4 neutrons. And so what I think is going on is just like here, when the current cuts across and opens the neutron into 2 halves, and basically then cuts that way. So let's ignore this segment here. Essentially, it's got these positive vortices over here occurring that are pushing mounds into the corners where they can, like against the polygonal shapes, which then become neutrons. But like these vortices are pushing back this way as well. So depending on if there's enough current going through here, so again, increased current in the atom, not just around the atom, but in it. I don't know how to make sure it's in it if we ever do this. Not to suggest we do it, but obviously, like, what are we doing if I'm just talking about this? Obviously, we should figure things out, but this is clearly showing there's currents entering in specific pathways and channels. And so it leaves behind an imprint of it where this was the inlet, and this was the first outlet, and then the second outlet, where even like the top nucleus, or neutron, I keep saying that, the top because it's N, the top neutron is even like a larger, generally shaped, like it's bigger than this one, and this one, although this one's the smallest in here, but it's still probably like averages out in a way where we don't even detect the differences. If there is a difference, maybe it's just more dense there. I don't know. But like as the current increases in essence, then it tends to push back this way and produce another like central point of mass accumulation to then produce the fourth neutron, while having, I'm not sure exactly about these, but these are mainly based on the island and based on just reason and logic. So let's go to the island. It really is it's a crutch that's necessary. As much as people don't like me talking about the island, it is truly important. Without this island, I would never notice the nuances in my thoughts. It comes in right here in here, right across, basically. Right across. Boop. But as it's doing that, it's creating a vortex over here, I believe. Or, so definitely here. So this one we can basically see it. And then I think here, because of like this, just off center, like centrally located, maybe there. Like it's coming through right here. Or through here. Maybe that way. Generally speaking, I mean, obviously it's more complex, but still, like this is a current flow cutting across here. And it's not exactly centered on this, so I think it creates just a general vortex here. And because it's cutting across here, then the vortex rotates this way, which then helps shape this neutron, and then it cuts in this way and then across this way. And when it does that, it creates this one, this like rotating center point here, which helps shape the region. And another one here. Obviously, we can find many of these types of things. I'm just guessing in this instance, but it does provide like a basis. Like, okay, generally though, a current cutting across like that would, like, if we ignore this section over here, like before this neutron split into two, this current's cutting across. There's a neutron here. There's a neutron here. It's cutting across. It's probably kind of like this triangle. And then it starts going into this one and through it, which starts just putting more pressure this way. Getting another neutron over here at that point, and just another eddy, another major eddy. And I think the eddies correlate to the number of flows they can channels they can exit through. So maybe these ones over here are related to curvature somehow, in a similar way, but of eddies, but I don't see it. Okay, I don't want to get too distracted on things that are not just straight up chemistry. But there's lithium-6 from there, and lithium-7, so that is 3 elements where currents can generally explain them pretty significantly. And so starting from lithium-7 plus increased currents again, my thought is, at this point, this is getting a little out of my like league to like do easily. But my thought is it probably, like these ones over here, this current's coming across and putting pressure on this system and these systems, but like because of that, the current is getting generally deflected in the direction it hasn't gone yet as much to balance it out. So it effectively of the neutrons to split, because that's what it's gonna do. It's gonna split a neutron, I believe. Maybe it just accumulates one without splitting it, but I believe it just straight up splits one, and in so doing, it carves a channel through the polygonal side. So it like has to split the neutron to carve the channel out. So maybe that does happen in hydrogen like this, where it does create a stable particle in a truly spherical setting. That's kind of like a core, but the inlet that's going around is not like, that's not its trajectory. Like its trajectory is just straight down into the core, but it's got a core there. So maybe at some point it begins to split the core and then it cuts across and carves another outlet, at which point it becomes helium. So I guess it's possible that it's kind of like that. But so that's what I'm thinking is essentially it splits the neutron again, carves a channel again here. I'm not, and then I was thinking like it has one of the benefits of starting at hydrogen is it's simple. But like as soon as the first helium is simple in that it's like a completed thing, so you don't have to worry about that it bonds to things in your considerations. Like, although this seems like it should bond to things. I'm not sure. Like this current may backflow. It may just straight up backflow and create like two resistance points where like there's flows crossing, kind of like two-way traffic. Every channel has two-way traffic, not just this, but also the opposite. In a way where it actually influences the outcome of the currents. That I'm not sure. That's one of the things I'm not sure about. That would really take some consideration to work through all the possibilities. But it cuts across here, I believe, and just segments this one again, and this essentially balances this in a way where then we have 4 protons. I'm thinking again, like, because there's a neutron there, this current that's cutting across towards here gets caught on it and just creates an eddy, which leads to the 4th proton. But at the same time, because it has this like channel over here that really doesn't have a current to it that much, like it's coming this way, so it's cutting across here, it's getting blocked here, it's cutting over here, so it's kind of going in there, but it really, like, this segment might actually be a like optimal location for another current to come in, just like this current, and bond. So like if helium or if hydrogen comes in here and its currents tap in as like the source inlet, maybe. Although that doesn't make sense. Certainly one of the bigger hiccups I've ran into is considering how these form bonds. Certainly I can explain a single bond pretty easily, and even this actually sheds light on why hydrogen bonds are so unique, because they are truly the only inlet and outlet. So they're like equal inlet, equal outlet, whereas like here they may not be equal. Here, like for sure they're not going to be equal here. Like this is a greater inlet / outlet than these are, because it does twice as much material through it. So there's considerations of that nature. But my thought is here, so if we thought about this again, which one would do it again? Maybe this one, even though that doesn't like, maybe by this force. Let's start anew. I'll just do just to show why I can't do this one very easily, if anything. Boron. Okay. Boron. Yeah, no. No. Okay, okay. Boom. We have hit the p orbital. Let's say 450. Maybe. That's fine. Just throw that on there for balls. So if we start from here, let's just draw that real quick. So specifically the channel across at equal distance here, because that's how it formed. Although maybe it reshapes itself over time here, where these are closer, just kind of based off of that island. So maybe I'm being a little unreasonable. Okay, I think I drew that right. Okay, good. Neutron, and neutron. Let's see, I think maybe it's reasonable for them to just be kind of in line like that. Not sure about the protons and the current. Let's just draw the current, at least, like, generally passing through. So straight through. Boom. Straight through. And then generally going like that. And then this one, I'm not completely sure, because maybe. But then we got, let's just draw the currents, the eddy, something. Maybe here. Eddy. Okay, that was the 4 for beryllium. So we're starting. We're not even on boron yet. We're just rewriting B E49. Okay. My thoughts, I mean, especially if these are here, is this one's probably the most susceptible, or maybe this one. I want to think that it starts spreading out this way, but this way almost suggests it just keeps going like a freaking like Gurnar is what pops to mind in my mind. So many things have a positive and negative aspect. So Gurnar, pardon me. Gurnar. I noticed this current flows. I guess I won't talk about this. It's a little. In essence, there's a positive here and a negative here, like a where the currents diverged and where currents converged. And I was looking at and there's just a lot of that where there's like positive and negative, like a battery, where they're connected. And I was looking at Gurnard, like, isn't it interesting that Gurnard is off center here? Here's the actual center of the hexagon of Gurnard. The center is here, and here is the mountain chain. But isn't it interesting that below this mountain chain, almost like its negative equivalent, are these like water features that start from one and then just start branching out? Mind you, everything here is formed after 7,000 years ago or something. Whenever ancient Dwarka was attacked. So, like, it's a good possibility that this feature is not just water that carved it, that shaped it, that made it as it is. This feature is like a negative of the positive. It's like a maybe even a shadow of it, like sideways down on the ground permanently in Brennan's shadow, peak at the Dattatreya. Dattatreya just taps into some other energy and goes off into the cosmos. Something. But I was thinking maybe this is representative of how energies flow. Like, truly. Where they begin to push up mounds, and as they do, they begin to push up many mounds that then produce like a feature that maybe is more like this, like mounds getting pushed up in a row. So I'm not sure if that's more true than that, like this divides and it goes on. Because if you think about it, it's almost like an explosion. Like, it should generally be like this. One thing coming in, like a surface that it contacts, and then just where like it doesn't really go back this way. Maybe like at times when the energy flows are just that easy for it to do, to fill it in, but it really like preferentially maybe does like a thing like this where like the mass, it's more mass here. It's almost like a yin yang, like a yin yang. Like something of that nature. I know that's not the best yin yang. Pardon me. Pardon me. I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts because I'm kind of stuck with that right now. So nah, let's say boron is 11 5b. Let's see how many isotopes. Boron isotopes. Whew. Stable isotopes, please. 10 and 11. Okay. Ladder. Mostly 11, some 10. Always short half-lives. Longest living is 8. Okay, so that's the thing with, so like at that point, these are really just not stable. So these currents don't really, there's no need to explain them because the currents would just be like, yeah, those would blow up. Maybe that's useful, but just like I feel like just the concept, like when it becomes too out of balance, it just can't stay as like that's energy state. It must like break into components. Is where like, for instance, like if this, let's say this eddy over here becomes a neutron, it just fills with so much material, this becomes a neutron, suddenly like this whole region is just cut off, and this current is not flowing, and this just breaks away, like this whole segment. And then it's just this other piece that then breaks into components. Because it doesn't have a current flowing through it. So it needs a current flowing through it. So that's what's going on here, is it allows space for a current to flow. But it also needs these, it does need the neutrons. Like these can't just be, we can't just come in with a bunch of eddies. Eddy, 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 eddy. Like it doesn't, it's not stable. Like it needs more systems giving them like places to eddy in relationship to. Other than just other eddies, like that's not very stable. They tend to like just merge into a more stable system at that point without something keeping them. So let's go ahead and guess this way, just for the sake of it. Okay, new color. New color. I was having fun coloring in pink. It's nice. It's pleasant. Okay. Okay, so we got that one. Okay, let's draw one directly across from it. And then under it. So we still keep that. This shape probably doesn't really get influenced that much if it's separating this direction to the top. I know I say this in like mouse with this tiny little thing. That's probably hard to follow if you don't actually know where I'm like consciously looking on top of that. Like I know where I'm looking and moving it to, but like if it's not, if it's just kind of, you probably understand what my point is because you're like, ah. Okay. So I'm thinking, oops, we get an outlet here. So let's do like this. It's almost like a electrical circuit or something in some way, even though it's not at all. Like the polygon with currents in it are almost like an electrical circuit, but they're not. Okay, let's get some neutrons. Neutron. I'll just do that. Neutron. Neutron. You could probably understand why the ancients didn't put in all the things. They probably figured out a simpler way to just write this because I'm sure. Yeah. So, like, because this one, okay, I'm thinking this is important. The thing I just inadvertently did, just out of this one, these two were probably in line here, but then it separates, so it kind of like moves one over here. But then this didn't move, so it's still kind of like in line with both these channels. Plausible. So we now have 6 neutrons. Let's get some currents flowing. Let's get some currents flowing. We got the same currents. We got this current. We got this current. This side stays unchanged pretty much. This current. This current. This current. Okay, we got, I guess, like this way. I'm not sure which way it would go in both these instances. And, although maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'd just be drawing eddies at this point. That's the problem with going up in the sequence, doing this. It's hard. It's not that it's not true. It's just really hard to, like, reason through. Like, it almost needs examples, and then if I'm looking at islands as examples, no one's gonna believe me. So, oh, I'm just trying to think what would happen here. Would it naturally form? Like, it may be that it doesn't have to have eddies, it just needs to have space. But I think the eddies are necessary for holding that space, so it must need to form somewhere. Let's go back to beryllium, because I think I did kind of draw one here, but then I was like, it probably just goes right up, but it probably runs into it and swirls around it, and this positioning is probably not exactly perfect, but at the same time, then this would really almost suggest every neutron should produce an eddy. So maybe, let's say, maybe it requires this cross current. So there's a current here, and there's a current here. This may be exactly straight across and not actually angled like that. That's my thought. Like, if we were to go to this island that I draw here, like, this would maybe come across here and start moving it out here so that this current can just go across, creating some kind of opening over there, or maybe over here. It really may be like a trident, like, because that's what tridents do. Energy flows of tridents are legitimately like energy flows that are visible in places. So it may be that this is all wrong, and that's the problem. Is it probably is that it actually starts like this and just kind of fans out more and more with just like more and more like that, which then over time wraps maybe all the way around to a point where there's like an inlet. And then the neutrons and the protons wrapping just all the way around. And then we're back at hydrogen. So that's probably how it is, I would say. So maybe I'm mistaken here. Because this is getting kind of silly almost. In terms of like the plausibility of moving forward. This way that I just said over here, plausible to move forward with. this way I'm trying to do over here? I'm not so sure. I don't know. I mean, it may just generally start to do like that and then that kind of things to essentially lead to this still. Also, this inlet would be like a single tube in like a sphere, I guess. Not really like a... It goes literally in like a donut, like a torus shape. Like in. But maybe it doesn't come out, and like it maybe comes out the same way it came in until it is able to carve an outlet over here. Which is maybe when it blows its top. And then the crust maybe fractures. And it grows to a new radius and becomes helium. Then becomes lithium. Then becomes etc. And just goes through, and including through the ions or isotopes. Isotopes. Okay, guys, that's been about an hour. I hope that resonates with some people. I think it's legit. I think it's legit. Hope to hear from some people.